Hello and welcome to Empathy at the Table with me, your host, Tony Anagor. Today I'm delighted to introduce you to our guest, John Dieffenbach. John has spent his entire career as a communicator, starting as a newspaper reporter and then becoming a professional business negotiator and public speaker. His area of focus is the art and science of influence. He currently leads the Americas negotiation team for Ernst & Young and has held similar roles at other tech companies such as IBM and Accenture. He's also author of the blog Running the Room, which is based on influence, leadership and sales for over 10 years. John describes himself as a New Yorker by breeding and now living the Californian lifestyle. Welcome to Empathy at the Table. John.
Hello, Tony.
Hello. This has been a long time coming. I'm really glad that you've agreed to join us today on our podcast. Where are you hailing from?
Right now, I'm sitting in the offices, our offices in Los Angeles.
Okay, yeah. Beautiful Los Angeles. Okay, so John, for our listeners who don't know you, could you just share a little bit about who you are, what it is you do, and your specific interest in negotiation?
Sure. My specific interest in negotiation, I'll start with the last. I've been at this for over 30 years. I kind of lucked into the world of negotiation when I took a job at IBM and landed in their outsourcing division doing large technology services deals. And IBM back then was a company that threw you in the deep end and said, figure it out. You've been trained and there's help available. And so right out of the gate, I was doing a $40 million outsourcing deal with a large Japanese company. And I joke about the fact that I walked into the conference room. Everybody there was 10 or 15 years older than me. And the other big difference is they knew what they were doing and I didn't. So I had to figure it out. And so I've been figuring it out for 30 years, learning along the way, finding out, what works, what doesn't work, how to get better at it, and having conversations with folks like yourself to talk about some of the peripheral sciences that play into negotiation around, social sciences, empathy, and things like that. So This is always exciting for me to have these conversations.
Super. I have to say that the way we came into contact, I don't know whether I told you the story. So, I mentioned I had an Achilles tendon injury. So I was faced with 3 months of nothing. I couldn't walk, couldn't do anything. And so I wrote a list of top negotiation experts that I would love to have a conversation with. And this was like back in May, June. And your name was on that list.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you.
So I connected with you on LinkedIn and I followed you for a couple of weeks. I watched your comments and loved your blog posts and then reached out to you. So that's how we met. And I think we've had 2 or 3 conversations since then. And I've really been excited by what you have to share and your knowledge. And one thing that really stood out for me, John, is, you have been in the world of negotiation for 30 years. You work with some of the largest companies in the world. You're currently working for Ernst & Young. You're leading a team training negotiators. And I remember when we first spoke, I remember thinking, why is John interested in emotionally intelligent negotiation? And I asked you that. And your reply was, I was getting all of the deals when I would walk into the room, but I realized I was the biggest arsehole in the room. And I thought to myself, what else could I do if I wasn't? If I was able to connect with other people, what more could I get? What other things? And you said when you started to connect with other people, you found that your world completely changed and you're able to get even more than you expected from your deals. Can you share with us that whole shift, that perspective, and how that thing changed for you?
Yeah, I think growing up as a New Yorker, I kind of had a little bit of arrogance, 4th generation New Yorker arrogance in my DNA. And, it was the line we always say in New York is, you go first after me. So you're always trying to sort of stand out and look like the big dog. And what I discovered was influencing people to say yes is about understanding more about them and what they want
Hmm.
and dialing down on who I am. And so this has been an ongoing project of mine to try and, resolve this part of my personality. One of the big turning points for me, and it always sticks in my head, is reading How to Win Friends and Influence
Hmm.
People, which to my mind is the first book on emotional intelligence. It's not framed that way, but that really is what it is. And Dale Carnegie tells a story about sitting at dinner with a friend, and the host has some quote and says, well, as it says in the Bible, and I may have it backwards, it was Bible of Shakespeare, but he says, as it says in the Bible, blah, blah, blah. And the guy at the table sitting next to him nods his head and says, yes. And Dale Carnegie leans over to the guy and says, that's not right. That's not the Bible. That's Shakespeare. And his friend says nothing. And when they leave, he says, you're one of the leading experts on Shakespeare. Why wouldn't you have said something to him about the fact that that's not the Bible? That's from Shakespeare. And he said, and the guy said to me, Dale, why would I want to embarrass our host in front of everybody?
Hmm.
Why would I want to point out that he's wrong? In fact, if I don't point out he's wrong, and he knows who I am, at the moment when he realizes that was Shakespeare and I didn't say something about it, he will think all the better about me because I didn't call him out in that moment. And
Wow.
that hit me like, holy cow. I've always been the guy who's like, no, 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 you're wrong. That's from here. I have like a trivia brain. So I'm always capturing stupid facts. So it's always like, no, I got to correct that. I got to correct that. And it was a lesson in shut up. Just let them have the moment. Why do you need to correct them? Just be quiet.
Hmm.
And compounding that down, it's like, but why do you need to say this? Why do you need to show that? What's the purpose? And I just started to become much more purposeful in my communication with people, thinking, why are you going to say this now? What are you trying to accomplish with it? And anytime I hear myself saying, it's because you want them to think more of you, or it's
Hmm.
like you're trying to promote yourself, I stop. You can't promote yourself in negotiation in a collaborative environment where you're trying to get the other side to build trust. I can't make it about me anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been the struggle for 30 years, is to stop making it about me and to pull that ego down and to start to embrace more empathy and embrace more about what is it they're trying to do and how can I be more helpful. So
Hmm.
being more helpful and being more purposeful in how I communicate has really turned that tide and helped me give me the ability to generate more value, get
Hmm.
better deals, and create more collaboration in my negotiations.
And I mean, so the deals you do are in the hundred millions.
Yeah.
You're out there, and you're at the real sharp end of the wedge when it comes to these type of negotiations. Are you finding that it's almost a superpower having this ability to create that space, that gap in between stimulus and response, and be able to think about the other person?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'll tell you where the separation comes from. And again, this is something that I'm always working on. People conflate the concept of emotion and feelings in negotiation, and they need to learn to separate them. There's a big difference between feelings and emotion,
Hmm.
because we can have an interaction with somebody that causes us to feel something. There's something that goes on inside of us, whether
Hmm.
that's we start to feel angry about something, or we're happy about something, or we want to laugh, or whatever it is. But there's a feeling. And then the question is, how do we emote that feeling? And to separate them means it actually means we can control our emotions. Emotions are manufactured by us. We choose the emotions that we want to display. People who say, I have a short temper, they don't have a short temper. They just aren't taking the time to control a reflex that was either taught to them culturally or otherwise, that this is how you act. Like you're a New Yorker and this is,
Right.
you go like that, you go
Right.
at them.
Right.
Because I point out to people the whole British concept of a stiff upper lip,
Right.
right? When you're facing trouble, you don't complain, you keep a stiff upper lip and you keep going on. That's emotional control. That's saying, even though you feel this, we as a culture, we maintain our composure and
Right.
we don't get upset. We don't show emotion. That's emotional control. And so that piece of being able to separate those two is, as you described, a bit of a superpower in the ability to, the term I always use is run the room, running the room as a negotiator. Because which is why it's the name of my blog, Running the Room. When you go into a conference room and you got to get a deal done, I'm looking at a landscape of personalities, of interests, of what people want. Very often the deals we do are career make or break for us and for the client, because the client is trying to change something very big in what's going on in their environment. So if the deal doesn't go well, it costs people jobs. So there's a lot of emotion in that room. And if I'm able to be the one who can hang back, assess what's going on, control the temperature, I've got a better chance of driving the deal to signature. But anytime I introduce emotion, especially negative emotion, into a negotiation or conversation, what am I going to get back? Emotion, and possibly negative emotion. So I'm always trying to just keep it cool, keep it calm, keep people focused on what are we trying to get done. And if I feel that something's going on over here, then I'll start to think about, how can I show empathy for what's happening there, with how they're being challenged, what's going on there, and try and build some trust and some collaboration with that person and not react to what they're saying. Because sometimes when people yell at me, I'd never yell back in a negotiation. I sit back and I'll pause and say, that was not the reaction I thought you were going to have to what I said. Obviously, there's some way we're miscommunicating here. Can we address this and work this out? Because if I yell back, it's just going to escalate.
Right.
Now, if I take that emotion down, two things happen. Number one, I take the heat out of the room. But number two, everybody in the room realizes that it's not the person who's yelling that's controlling the environment. It's the person who is calmly resetting the emotion in the room. And they start to get the sense of, okay, that guy kind of knows what he's doing here. And, and I do get that ability then to run the room, because the people acknowledge. Yeah, that's where the power comes from.
Yeah, that's powerful. I love what you just said, resetting the emotion in the room. That's a really powerful concept. I actually read on your blog, you talked about I'm not a tree. And there's this idea of Isaac Newton's emotion, right? Action and reaction.
Right.
Can you talk a bit about that? How in a negotiation you use Isaac Newton's principles?
Yeah. The idea is, as I was saying, what you introduce is what you're going to get back. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And if somebody in a negotiation, and it has happened, that I suggested something and the other party said, well, that's just stupid. That's a stupid idea. And I think it's ridiculous you suggested that, or you're stupid or something. And I don't take that personally. We address it, we move on, I move on calmly. And in one instance, when I left the room, somebody said to me, I can't believe you didn't get upset, knowing, my normal personality. I can't believe you didn't get upset when they called you stupid. And I said, well, why would I? Because I'm not stupid. So it's like, if he called me a tree, if he said, you big tree, would I get upset about that? No, because I'm not a tree. So why do people get upset when somebody says something to them that is not true? And so if somebody calls me stupid, I'm not going to react, because I think, well, I'm not stupid. It was kind of silly that you said that. You may as well have just called me a tree, and it doesn't matter. But again, you hear that. And there's like what Cialdini describes as a click whir behavior of our feelings, that you hear click and your body goes. Somebody says, John, you're an idiot. My body's immediately going to go, oh wait, this guy just called. This is an affront. This is I'm throw down my glove and challenge you to a duel for calling me that.
Yeah.
Instead you pull it back and say, no, it's not true. I'm not, and I'm not taking the bait. I'm not taking the bait. You're not going to get me fired up.
I come across this so often when I'm teaching and negotiating, talking about emotional intelligence, talking about empathy. People tend to conflate empathy and emotional intelligence with supplication and weakness. And I'd like you to kind of, you're dealing with numbers, you're dealing with big numbers, you're dealing with big egos across the table, people with agendas. How are you able to demonstrate empathy and emotional intelligence without coming across as a wet blanket or as a walkover?
Yeah. Well, part of it is, as I said, certainly, and it's going to sound strange to say this, but I actually love it when somebody starts yelling in the room. Because when someone starts yelling in the room, you've now established, sort of the high mark in terms of how high can this go, and that I can bring it back down. And that's part of showing the emotional intelligence, is to say, I'm not taking the bait.
Right,
I'm not going to react to emotion with emotion. I'm going to react to it with calm and say, let's deal with this. The empathetic part of it comes from understanding that the other party may be under a lot of pressure and they're showing frustration. And it may not be what we're doing. It may be something else that's going on where it's now manifesting itself. I mean, that's the amazing thing about people, right? Is so often we will encounter somebody, whether it's a stranger or even a loved one, who in that moment is not being their true self.
Right, right.
In that moment, there's a world of things going on. Like, I don't know what you went through already today. It's obviously later in your day than it is mine. It's only still morning here in LA, but my morning took off like a shot out of a cannon, and I've been bam, 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 bam. So I had to take a pause and just do some breathing exercises for about 5 minutes before I got on this call, because otherwise I would be coming into this with like my hair on fire, because everything else is happening. And the same thing happens to us in our lives. Is sometimes you run into somebody and they react in a certain way, and we just have to recognize, I don't know what's behind all that. The person is behaving not the way I'm used to them being, so there must be something else going on there. And so the emotional intelligence is to recognize that you're not under attack.
Right.
And that's actually a line I read to use when you are encountering somebody who comes at you strong with a lot of emotion, because they can trigger your innate defensive system.
Yeah, sure.
And you kind of rise up and clench up and you feel like you've got to respond. And they said, if you, an emotionally intelligent person, will say to themselves, I'm not under attack. And it's like you're calming your reflex system to say, relax, this is fine, this is an incident, we're going to deal with it, we're going to be okay. So that's the part of it that I always try to remember in terms of having empathy. I don't necessarily have to express it and say, that sounds like it's really difficult, what's going on, or something like that.
Yeah.
But I can show empathy by not reacting emotionally to something that I see, and saying to myself, this is a situation that I don't understand. I'm not going to build on it. I'm going to let this go, let this play out, and see what happens. Now, that being said, Chris Voss has great guidance in Never Split the Difference. Probably the biggest thing that comes out of that is some of the tools of communication that he used as an FBI hostage negotiator, and that is establishing empathy with the other party, because a hostage negotiator has to establish trusted communication as fast as possible.
Sure.
And so the sooner you can say, it sounds to me like, or it feels like this is really a challenge for you, or something like that, you can pull a lot of that emotion down, because the other party is now saying, okay, here's somebody who's listening to me. This is somebody who I can trust. And I don't think you come across as a wet blanket just saying to somebody, wow, it sounds like you've had a really rough morning.
Yeah.
And just acknowledging they've been through something.
Also, I think it's again, this is a point you've just made, which is interesting to me, that you don't always have to vocalize your empathy. Just having that authentic curiosity about why they've shown up the way they've shown up. I think that in itself creates a gap, right, between your the reaction that you would normally have, because you're trying to cultivate a genuine curiosity about the other person, why they've shown up for the deal, right? On paper, if they're in the room, they're looking for a deal of some sort. And I think
Right.
that stands you in good stead. Do you find that, you know, when you are building the rapport and connection in your negotiations, and that part goes really well, and you kind of understand their motivations and you know, their interests, when you come to talk about numbers, the hardcore numbers, is there a switch in the dynamic when you actually bring that into the negotiation?
Yes, there can be, obviously, because the numbers are a little bit harder and more binary.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
there's no grayness to data.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it is what it is. What what has to happen at that point then is when you're getting into, you know, let's say then in the course of this, somebody says to me, well, you know, I want a 20% price decrease in order for us to do this. So now I've got to shift gears and say, okay, so it sounds like something has changed on your side because all of our discussions up until now have been about innovation and accuracy and efficiency.
Mm,
And now it's about price. So help me understand where the price request is coming from.
right.
And that's an emotionally intelligent slash quasi empathetic way because you're saying to the person, sounds like you've got something going on your side. How can I help with it? But you're actually challenging legitimacy
Right, right.
of the ask, pushing back and saying, why are you asking me for a 20% discount now? But you're
Mm,
saying it in a different way. And this is the thing that people don't appreciate about negotiation in you know, I call the upper right hand box, in the collaborative box, which is not the positional box or the relationship box. It's the one where you got to pull relationship and substance together and balance the two of them at the same time.
mm,
Is when you're having these conversations with people around legitimacy, it's a function of saying the right words to the right person at the right time. That's what negotiation is. It's a conversation to gather data and understand what is it we're trying to do and can we do something together. And
mm.
the art of influence is using the right words with the right person at the right time. So when somebody says to me, I want a 20% discount, I'm not going to say, why are you asking for that? Those are the wrong words to the right person at the right time. I'm going to try to say the right words, which are words of influence to get them to come back and explain their position in a candid way.
Mm.
Help me understand what's going on. You have changed what you have done before. And, you know, it relies on one of Robert Cialdini's principles of influence, of consistency, because you're saying to the other person, up until now, this is what you have said, and it has been consistent. And suddenly you're now being inconsistent.
Right.
Help me understand that. And that triggers that click whir inside of them to say, oh my gosh, he's identified an inconsistency. And we as people always strive to be consistent, that
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
say and what we do is the same. And so now I have used tools of empathy and emotional intelligence and influence and the seven elements to say to that person, help me explain to me why I'm being asked for a 20% discount now. And I have done that. And sometimes people say, I just thought I'd ask. I just thought I'd see what you'd do.
Right, right.
I said, okay, that's fair. Never a problem for somebody to ask for something. It's up to us to say no or work it out.
Yeah,
And so now I'm able to, you know, kind of push back on that. Say, fine, let's get the deal back on track then. We can't do a 20% discount. It'll destroy the value of the deal.
yeah,
You know, where
yeah.
do we go next?
What I perceive in you, John, since we've met, I mean, I look at your profile on LinkedIn, and it's, I mean, it's a who's who of the top companies, and your experience is just incredible. And you write your blog, and I think I remember reading somewhere or hearing somewhere you wanted to be a stand-up comedian at one point in your life, and you
Yeah.
were a reporter, all these things. What I sense from you is a real deep sense of humility. You come across as a very humble person. Is this your natural persona, or is this learned behavior?
Learned. It's learned behavior. Yeah, I mean, I as I said, I grew up in a kind of with a big ego, thinking a lot. I mean, you know, obviously in terms of, you know, how people did in school and things like that, there's all that sort of thing that kind of your parents kind of pump you up. And it really took some time for me to recognize, not that you're not so great, but like, stop making it about yourself.
Right. Right.
Start making, if you make it about other people, if you enjoy other people, learn about people, and open up yourself to that, you're going to benefit so much more. And I think certainly, getting married, having 5 children, raising children, that taught me a great deal. I mean, I
Mm.
used to say to my kids, I still say to them, you can't lift yourself on your own shoulders.
Yes.
You need to work with other people and have them tell you did a great job. You can't say, I'm great, therefore this should happen. You have to show it. You can't tell it. And I started telling them that, and started saying, yeah, I got to do that myself. I have to show, not tell. Just get in there and do great stuff, and other people can say, wow, that was really good. And again, stop making it about myself. Just get in there and solve problems. And in a classic, reading a lot more about leadership and understanding leadership as I started to manage teams over time, you learned it's absolutely true. A leader is somebody who is focused on making their team successful, not focused on their team recognizing their awesomeness. It's
Yes.
about, I have a team now, and I now have a responsibility as a leader to help these people achieve what they want to do.
Yes.
That's the little bit of a twist in it. And so that's all been learned over the course of my career. And I hope I'm doing well with it.
Well, so you run a team, right? You've got a team of 12 plus people. And
Yeah, 12
so
full-time negotiators.
you're teaching them. I mean, your team is they're a team of negotiators. So
Mhm.
you're I guess what they would call a super negotiator, right? You teach
I don't know
negotiators
about
how
that.
to
I'm an old negotiator. I don't know about a super negotiator, but I've obviously have been through a lot of different scenarios, and I teach, but I also learn from them because
Mm,
they all come from different backgrounds. We have folks who came over from procurement. We have folks who came over from technology. So there's a lot of stuff I learned from them, and I think to your point, if I were to say it in terms of leadership and how to be successful as a negotiator, curiosity and an open mindset is so important to understand. I think it was Aristotle who said, "What we know is limited, and what we don't know is unlimited." And
mm.
so the idea is to always pursue the unlimited and find out, what else don't I know? How much more can I learn? And I get that from my people all the time.
Mm, mm. There's another point. I mean, I could go on forever, but we do have a limited time. But I did want to bring out this point as well. This is something I read in your absolutely incredible blog. So if you want to follow John on his blog, it's called runningtheroom.com.
Yep,
Um,
that's.
and there was an article where you talked about uh, just because you're being invited to tender for a bid, it doesn't mean that you're going to win the deal.
Mhm.
And what was really important was finding out what your client's BATNA was, right? What were their
Mhm.
options
Yeah.
before you actually put the effort and the resources into actually bidding for a deal.
Yeah.
That for me is very emotionally intelligent. That's really about looking at the landscape of the negotiation before you negotiate. Now, is
Mhm.
this something that's happened to you, or is this something that maybe other people have shared with you, and this was
Oh,
the
no,
solution?
no, no. This has happened. So, I mean, this is about qualification in term
Mm,
before you pursue something, just qualifying yourself in or out. And the
mm,
two elements that I always look at are, as you mentioned, the client's BATNA. Can they get this from one of the other vendors in the business just as well as they can get it from me, or do I have something special? If there are a number of other players that they can work with, then they have a strong BATNA. So I have to overcome that. And the second one is relationship.
mm,
What's the quality of my relationship with this client? Is it strong enough that that I have a relationship of trust, that they're going to come to me first and say, I want to work with you? If I
mm,
don't have a relationship and the client has a great BATNA, they don't know me, they don't like me, and they don't need me. So why
mm,
would I bother bidding on that work? I'm going to qualify myself out of that. and I had a deal that I was brought in to help as, as we were pursuing it. I was brought in along the way. They said, can you help with the negotiation part of this, blah, blah, blah. And we did not win the deal. And the guy who was leading the pursuit said to everybody, hey, thanks everyone. We gave it our best. We started in last and we finished in second, according to the client. And I didn't want to say it in front of everybody, but I wanted to yell at the guy, what do you mean we finished in second? We started in last and we finished in last. There is no second in sales.
Right.
You either win or you lose.
Right.
And if you started in last, why'd you continue? Why didn't you recognize we're in last place? We probably shouldn't bother. Let's spend the money doing something else to show the client the value we can bring. Let's do a project. But why chase work we're not and spend, in our case, millions of dollars pursuing work that we're not going to win? So it's a waste of time and money.
And I mean, this is another adjective that comes to my mind as I'm hearing you talk. We've talked about curiosity, we've talked about humility. And what's coming up for me here now is listening to you, it's creativity. You come across as you approach your negotiations as creative pursuits and brainstorming and is that how you see negotiations?
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's an opportunity to have some fun in it, as you mentioned, I did do stand-up comedy. I would never say I was a stand-up comedian, but I did try my hand at stand-up comedy a couple times. If there's a way to have fun and break it up a little bit, then I'm going to look for that too. To get people to laugh. Just say, look, it doesn't have to be so serious. We can have a good time while we're doing this. Let's figure out how we do something together. So yes, I do try to bring in a little bit of creativity. Sometimes some things I'll do in the room to break things up a little bit, or how I'll communicate with people. I mean, I always try to come in just kind of big and friendly. And one of the things I do, for example, is if it's a day-long negotiation after lunch, I will throw a bag of chocolate across the table and just spill chocolates out for everybody to eat. And there's two reasons. Number one, because it's fun. So people kind of like it when all of a sudden candy comes spilling across the table. But number two, one of the things that the brain needs when it gets tired is sugar.
Right.
And a tired brain says no. A brain that's awake will think and say yes. So by putting chocolate on the table, I'm trying to get everybody's brain to wake up a little bit more so we can continue collaborating. And so I don't get people shutting down and saying no to things because they're getting tired from a long day.
A tired brain says no. Wow.
Yeah.
So your negotiations, like you see on TV, people in a room and, closed doors and we're not leaving here till we get a deal, sitting across each other. I mean, is that how they are?
They are. I mean, it's not I'm not leaving. And a lot of them are virtual. I mean, I've done a bunch of deals since we got into COVID and everything became virtual. I have done them without meeting people, which honestly, I don't like.
Right.
I was just over in Malaysia and ran a couple of negotiation training sessions in person for the first time in 3 years, and it was so energizing.
Yeah.
And then I had a deal with a company in the Midwest, and I did get the opportunity to fly there and visit with them and have lunch with my counterpart, who turns out to have been an art history major and into history like I am. So we discovered things that we had in common over lunch and had a great time. You can't do that if you're not in person. It's maddening. So there's a lot of adaptability that's required. I mean, that's another adjective that I would throw in there. You've got to be highly adaptable in this world because every personality is going to test and pull on different parts of you, and you can't be rigid in how you respond to things.
So, John, the first time we met, I remember you said, when we finished the conversation, you said the biggest mistake I made when I booked this call was not booking another session for us to talk again. And we did. And I feel exactly the same as we come to the end of this. I really enjoy talking to you. How can our listeners, how can they find you? What big thing are you working on that they might be able to help you with at the moment, John?
Well, I am on LinkedIn, obviously, as you mentioned. I am pretty active there just in posting my thoughts. I have my blog that I do on a monthly basis, Running the Room, runningtheroom.com. I'm in the process of working on a book to try to bring my stories together in some comprehensive fashion. And so I would just love more engagement from people to hear what are their experiences, what's going on, what are the things that they want to learn, and how can I help people get better at this? Because something that people don't appreciate among professional negotiators is we want a professional negotiator on the other side of the table. I think people perceive that I would rather have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing because I can take advantage of them because I'm, as you said, some super negotiator. That's not true, because somebody who is inexperienced is afraid and they say no to everything. Wow. Because no is the safest word in the world. There's no risk in no. Only yes has risk. And I need somebody who understands what yes means, that it's okay to say yes to the things I'm proposing because they understand the consequences and they get where I'm going and what the trade-offs are. So I want people to read my stuff and get better at this because we're all going to get better deals if we do.
Better negotiators make better deals.
Yeah.
Fantastic. John Dieffenbach, thank you very much for joining us, Empathy at the Table. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
Okay, thank you so much, Tony. All right,
thank you, John. Wow, what a fantastic conversation that was. Thank you very much, John, for joining us at the table today. I really enjoyed our conversation. And if you've enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to like or subscribe to our podcast, either on Spotify, or you can find us also on YouTube. Please connect with us, and we'd love to hear your comments. Until next time, we look forward to seeing you at Empathy at the Table.